coffee break, Procreate coffee break at the Procreate Cafe. Today we're going to be making this super fun XOXO sticker, and you can see the letters have this little highlight on them that makes them look rounded. I loved how this piece turned out, so I'm really excited for us to create it together today. So if I go back out to my gallery, if you haven't had a chance, download the template that I provided, or you can use your own letters, whichever you prefer. In the template, I've provided you 3 letters. One layer has the letters itself. One layer has our color palette at the bottom. You see me toggle that on and off. If I close those, the third layer, if you turn it on, shows the steps that we're going to follow today. And I like to embed those right into the template so you don't have to go looking for a separate PDF or a website to remember the steps. So what we're going to do today, we are going to color in our background, color in our letters. We are going to add those letter highlights that I just talked about. We're then going to add some letter dimension, put that sticker outline around our letters, add a bit of sticker dimension, and then our piece will be ready to share. So with that, we're going to turn off the steps, but you can refer to them at any time. Turn back on our color and our letters. 2 things we have to do to get ready before we start creating. First, we're going to create our color palette. So I'm going to go over here to my palettes. You can either click the plus sign to add a whole new block in, or I'm trying to fill in some of the space here of other palettes that I've created and don't have too many colors in them. So I'm going to add today's palette right along this bottom line right here. So to do that, not using my pencil, but using my actual finger, because Procreate knows the difference, I'm going to hold that on the first color, the green color. And you'll see it pop up. The bottom half of this circle that showed up, you can see, if you can see just around my finger here, that teal color, that's the active color. Oop. If I hold it here, then the top color is the color that I'm currently holding on. So if I let go, that becomes our active color. So now that I've turned it into that green color, I'm going to click here, and I'm going to repeat the process for the other colors. Click here to turn my active color to that light teal and add it to my palette. Same thing for the dark teal, add it to my palette. And to add white, I know these are pure white just from other tutorials that I've done, but to be super sure I have pure white, I always go over to the disc. No matter where I am on the circle, if I double click in that upper left corner, I end up getting pure white. So I can do that. Bottom gives me pure black, which we don't need today. But you can see if I click over here and double click, it snaps there to pure white. It knows that's what I'm looking for. So now that I have pure white selected, I go back to the colors of the palette area, and I add that to my palette as well. And those 4 colors are all we're going to be using today. So with that in mind, I can go to layers, I can turn off palette. The other thing we have to do to get ready is just create the brush that we need. So if you go into the brushes, all of the brush sets that were provided by Procreate as a default when you got the app, there should be a calligraphy brush set. If you click on calligraphy and scroll down, you'll find a monoline brush. You'll have these others, but you won't necessarily have these alternate monolines. Those are all ones that I've created over the years. What we're going to do today is create that sticker monoline brush, and the reason we're doing that is that the monoline that's included, if I give it the maximum size, it's not, I need to do this in a color you can actually see, it's not really big enough for what we want to do today, especially when we do that sticker outline. So what we're going to do is go back here, go into calligraphy, go into monoline. We never modify one of the original brushes. It's good practice to swipe it to the left, hit duplicate. I now have what's showing as a monoline 6. Yours might show as monoline 1 or 2. I'm going to click on that, so clicking on it once selects it as my active brush. Clicking on it a second time opens up the Brush Studio. Now, going through all the properties can be very overwhelming. It can be a lot of fun once you get into it, but we're going to keep this really simple today. We're going to click on Properties towards the bottom, and just here under Brush Properties, there should be maximum size. And we're going to bump that up to about 400. Ballpark, it doesn't have to be perfect. Mine's at 405. I'm happy with that. If you want to give your brush a different name, we just click About a Brush at the bottom, and here where it says monoline 6, I can click and I can rename that sticker monoline, or anything else. Done. And I'm going to hit done over here. I already had a sticker monoline brush, so I am going to delete what we just did, but if you don't, please don't delete it. So I'm going to be using the sticker monoline brush that I already had set up. Okay, and that's everything we need to do to get set up and get going. So currently we only have our letters on. A good practice that I always do is I like to duplicate my letters and save a set just in case something goes wrong. I end up editing something, I don't like it, and I just want to have that original set of letters back. So I've turned it off, I've duplicated it, turned it off, just going to leave it there for now. At the end, once I'm happy with my piece, if I'm getting low on layers, I can always delete that layer. I want to add a layer to be my background color. I don't like to use the background color at the bottom because it doesn't have all the functionality of a full layer. So what I'm going to do, I want to create a layer right here in between the two sets of letters that I have. So I'm going to click on the bottommost layer. I'm going to click that plus sign, and that creates a new layer right above the one that I had selected before. My background color is that green color, so I'm going to go into my color palette, select the green, and then because I'm just filling in the whole background, I can just drag and drop, and that filled in, you can see here the whole layer just in that green color. So already we have our background filled in. Next thing we want to do is fill in our letters into that teal color. So I'm going to click on my letter layer. I can rename these if I want. I can click here, click rename, and rename this to background. And I can do the same thing here. Select the layer, click on it again, the menu pops up, click rename, and I'm going to call that my letters. And now I want to fill those in the blue color. There's two ways I can do that. So either way, I want to select teal as my active color. I can drag and drop. Oh, there it goes. It didn't show for some reason the first time. So I can do a straight drag and drop of color. The other way, it's easy because these are all connected. So I drag and drop once. If I had all my layers separate and say they weren't touching each other, I can also go here, turn on alpha lock on my layer, which means I can only do things where I have something drawn. And then if I click on it again and click fill layer, it will fill it with the active color. So either way achieves the same thing. In this case, the drag and drop is probably a little bit quicker for us. Next, we want to do that highlight. So I'm going to add a layer on top. Let's name this layer highlight. I'm going to select my pure white color that I had. I have now the sticker monoline brush selected. That's way too big, so I'm going to go down to the bottom. That's probably okay. So my brush is right now at about 2%. So make sure you have a brush size. You want something that's smaller than the width of your lettering. You don't want it to take up the whole space. I could probably even bump that down to 1%. Yeah, I think I'm going to do that. Now, what I'm going to do very carefully is go through and draw a white line down the middle. It doesn't have to be perfect. If it had to be perfect, I would stop and use like the snapping tool. But as long as this is generally in the middle, ooh, that ending got a little wonky. Maybe I'll erase some of that. Bump up my eraser a bit. And I'm just going to try to bring that in a bit. I'm just trying to get the white color in approximately the middle. Ooh, it's hard to talk and concentrate at the same time, isn't it? Okay, if this wasn't on screen, I'd be twisting and turning a little bit more. Okay, here we go. Big, long one. That one got a little too close to the edge there. I think I'm going to redo that line. Maybe we'll try going the other direction. Sometimes one way's easier than another. And so you can see it's super wobbly. I had my coffee this morning. Probably not drawing my straightest lines ever, but this is going to work for what we need to do. So once I have this in there, and I'm pretty happy that my white lines are all somewhat centered or close to centered, I'm going to stay on that highlight layer. I'm going to go over to the adjustments layer, select the Gaussian blur, and very slowly, so remember Gaussian blur is one that we slide along our page to turn it on. So I'm going to start somewhere towards the left. At the top you can see it's showing 0%. I set down my pencil and slide it towards the right, and it starts upping a percentage, and with every percentage you can see the blur increasing. So that still looks way too drawn. 6% is starting to look pretty good to me. I'm going to look at 7. I don't think I want to go more than 7. That's looking pretty good. Where I can't tell exactly where my white starts and stops, if you zoom in, but you can see that the white is in the middle and it's darker on the edges. And that's what's going to give it that 3D look. It's going to look like the top, this middle part is a little bit higher. It's picking up the light better than the lower parts, which are darker. So it's giving it a nice rounded quality. I am pretty happy with how that is looking. So I'm going to turn off my adjustments layer and leave it just like that. Next, we want to give our letters a bit of dimension before we start adding the sticker background. So to do that, I'm going to want to create another layer, but I want this to be underneath. Actually, nope, I'm not even going to create a blank layer. I'm going to take my letter layer. I am going to swipe the letter layer to the left, and I'm going to duplicate it. So I have 2 copies of it. And I can't tell, 1, they're both the same color, and 2, they're stacked on top of each other, so nothing has really happened on my canvas. Now my background layer, or this shadow layer or dimension layer that I'm adding, I want it to be a little bit darker. So here's where I'm going to select my darker teal color that we have in our palette. It's here as my active color, and I can do the same thing as before, either drag and drop it in, or I can do the alpha lock and fill layer. I'm just going to do a quick drag and drop. It looks like nothing's happened, and the reason we can't see anything is because the layer we did this on is the bottom layer, so we're still just seeing the top layer. The one we just colored is completely covered. But if I go, make sure I'm still selecting this bottom darker layer, click my transform tool, and now I'm going to slide this down and to the right. Just a little bit, and there we can see that darker layer start to come out. We're not going to blur it. Sometimes I blur this to make it look more like a shadow. When I'm adding it as dimension, I like to leave it just like that. There might be some areas, especially where they meet up. Let me turn off the adjust, where it just looks funny. It looks like a double line. So I can go back in. I might go on the 2% now. Whoop. Make my brush around the 2%. And just go into where I have those funny bumps, and I can just smooth that out a little bit. It's probably better down on my 1% actually. Right. If you have sharp edges, you just join the corner to corner. There, now it starts to look a little more, you can see how that changes. Instead of the 2 bumps and making them look distinct, it makes it look like that bottom layer is actually joined with the top layer. So I can go around and do this, and it doesn't have to be perfect. We're just making sure the eye isn't too... There's nothing that looks funny to the eye when we look at this. There. How is that looking? Not bad. There's probably a few others I could go through and do, but I think overall that's looking pretty good for what we're working on. All right. Now we're going to add that sticker outline, that white outline that will distinguish this, what's the sticker from what's the background. So that layer, we're going to want it to be underneath all of our letters but above our background. So I'll click on background, click the plus sign to add another layer. I'm going to go into my color palette, select that pure white color, and then I'm going to go over to the brush size. I'm still on that brush, and I'm bumping mine up to around 25. I think I'm at 30% there. around 30%. You may like more white or less white, so you can adjust with it. And then the trick to doing an outline is I'm going to go around the outer edge of my letters, and I'm just going to trace around the edge, and I'm going to let the brush do what it does. Up, up. This is the fun part. And that one, I know I came in a little too much. There we go. I don't recommend procreating a lot after you have morning coffee, or at least nothing that you expect to be too perfect. There we go. There's one spot down here that's bothering me, that little extra bump. So let me see what happens if I do this. Nope, now I've just moved the problem. So what I'm going to do is take a smaller brush and just smooth that out. Your eye will often tell you where something is off. If your eye's drawn to it, chances are someone else's eye could be drawn to it. Now, we are always more critical of our own work, but be your own judge. If you zoom out and it looks pretty good, that's great. If there's something that's off to you, go in and you can play with it a little bit. So that's our sticker outline all filled in. We're now going to add a little bit of a sticker dimension, similar to the dimension that we added here on our letters. So to do that, we're going to do the same thing. With the letters, we duplicated the letters. So here we're going to duplicate the sticker layer. We're going to select the bottom one. This time we're going to go in and select our light teal color. We are going to drag and drop that light teal color onto the sticker on somewhere on the white. And you can see here now we have a white layer, and then we have a teal version of that. We can't see the teal because it's right under the white, but in order to be able to see it, we go click on the transform tool. I'm going to drag down and to the left again. That's always my default, down and to the left. And there, now we can start to see some of that. And I was seeing this little piece come up here, and I either want it to really show, make it more of a straight left, or make it more down and not show there. I actually kind of like it, it breaks up. So maybe I'm going to go more to the left and not as much down. Okay, if that looks good, you can leave it like that. If you prefer to touch up how any of these are joining, it's easier when they're circles, you don't see it as much. But if you want to smooth out how those two meet up with each other, that is completely possible. Right. Sometimes it's those little touches that make all the difference. All right, that's looking pretty good to me. A little different than what I did last time, I think, but I like it. And that is everything that we're going to do today. Our piece is ready to be shared. Feel free to add textures on your background. You can do so many additional things. But you can see here that little white. I just love that white detail and the way it gives a little bit of extra dimension to our letters instead of them lying completely flat. So I hope you enjoyed today's tutorial. Make sure you've downloaded the templates that we've included. Please follow us so you can catch more of our fun tutorials. And if you do share your piece from today, please feel free to tag me. I would love to see what you're doing. Thanks so much, and we'll talk to you soon. Bye.